He is the low-born descendant of giants, but lives among the gods and demigods. He was married to a giant of a woman with whom he had 3 children, all of whom eventually turned into monsters of one form or another. He is now married to a goddess, and they bore twins. He is a trickster, a deceiver, and a shapeshifter. He is the progenitor of monstrous hybrid chimeras. He sows deception amongst the gods and men, and engineers the death of the most beloved of the demigods. His actions trigger a series of events that lead to a great war between the gods and the end of the world. Having played Elden Ring, you might think I am describing Radagon of the Golden Order, but you might be quite surprised to learn that I am describing Loki, a god in the pantheon of Norse mythology. Despite Elden Ring releasing over 3 years ago, we still know relatively little about Radagon of the Golden Order, except that he is the male form of Queen Marika the Eternal and that we must fight him at the end of the game. His true role in the historical events of the game remains for the most part mysterious. We were hoping to learn more information about him in Shadow of the Erdtree. However, the DLC contains not a single mention of Radagon and no new clues. Or is there something we've missed? In this video, we will explore what we know and what we still do not know about Radagon. We will also explore the myth of Loki, the Norse god of deception, and the many similarities of these two characters. If Radagon is based on Loki, how much more can this tell us about the unknown backstory of Elden Ring? Radagon is a mysterious character we begin to learn about several hours into Elden Ring. We don't find a single mention of Radagon while exploring the entire first region of the game, Limgrave. We find a statue of him at the Church of Pilgrimage in the Weeping Peninsula, and that's it. Not until we venture into Liurnia or Caelid do we begin to discover descriptions of Radagon. Just outside the Church of Vows in northeast Liurnia, a sword monument describes a second Liurnian war where there was no victory for the Golden, nor for the Moon. No prize but atonement, the birth of a vow. This is related to Radagon in a way that we'll soon learn more about. Inside the Church of Vows, we encounter a friendly giant turtle wearing a bishop's hat. This is Muriel, pastor of Vows. After speaking with him, you have the option of discussing Lord Radagon.
Lord Radagon was a great champion, possessed of flowing red locks. He came to these lands at the head of a great golden host. When he met Lady Renala in battle, he soon repented his territorial aggressions there, and became husband to the Carian queen. However, when Godfrey, first Elden Lord, was hounded from the lands between, Radagon left Renala to return to the Erdtree capital, becoming Queen Marika's second husband and king consort, taking the title of Second Elden Lord. The mystery endures to this day as to why Lord Radagon would cast Lady Renala aside, and moreover, why a mere champion would be chosen for the seat of Elden Lord.
Muriel says more about Radagon when you ask about Lady Renala.
She is queen, head of the Carian royal family, and governor of the Academy of Rea Lucaria, the great and beautiful full moon witch. Sadly, her heart was broken when Lord Radagon left her, and then, when the Academy rebelled against the royals, she was locked away in the Grand Library. In the end, Lady Renala was left alone, cradling the amber egg Lord Radagon bequeathed her. Now she devotes herself to it through forbidden rite, the grim art of reincarnation. You would do well to remember, severing a vow, strongest of bonds, has consequences ever more dire.
If you have Celestial Dew in possession when you visit the Church of Vows, then Muriel can also explain how Radagon initially made amends with Renala.
Do you possess any celestial dew? Then I would like to share my knowledge with you. Concerning the miracle of this Church of Vows, Radagon once cleansed himself with celestial dew, repented his territorial aggressions, and swore his love to Rennala. The order of the Erdtree and the fate of the moon were conjoined, and all the wounds of war forgiven. This miracle blesses the Church to this day, and so you need only follow Radagon's example to restore any bond, however strained or severed, to its rightful state of harmony.
Celestial Dew is a hidden tier found in the Eternal City, also known as a Night tier. We know that Queen Marika the Eternal has ties to the Eternal Cities and the Nox who live there, as they both are of the same stock as the Newman race of the Ancient Dynasty. During Elden Ring, it's possible to strike and kill many of the NPCs. Striking an NPC turns them hostile, and they will draw weapons and fight back. We can either run away or finish what we started. However, we can reverse what we've done in most cases. We can use Celestial Dew ourselves at the Nox Monk statue in the Church of Vows to carry out absolution. The NPC will be reset to their former friendly state, unless the NPC we killed is a merchant. That person makes no mention of our transgressions. It's as if their memory of the events has been wiped clear. Therefore, absolution in practice is somewhat deceptive if you think about it. The effects benefit the one who imbibes the fluid, but it is the person they've transgressed against whose memory is wiped. This leads to all kinds of questions. Did Rennala truly forgive Radagon's transgressions? Or was she merely under the influence of the Celestial Dew? Whether that's true or not, Radagon's use of Celestial Dew to make Rennala forget 2 entire wars and forgive him is rather tricky. Another sword monument located in the stretch between Bellum Church and the Grand Lift of Dectus mentions Radagon by name. The First Liurnian War. Radagon's glory burns red as his hair. This sword monument indicates that soldiers died here in battle, but as a marker, it also indicates just how short a distance Radagon and his armies marched during his first incursion into Carian territory before they had to turn back. The distance isn't far at all, as the Grand Lift of Dectus is still within sight. Radagon and his armies likely used this ancient lift to access Liurnia from the Altus Plateau. To lead his army only such a short distance into enemy territory indicates Radagon had a huge failure here, and makes him seem like a poor military leader. The sword monument outside the Church of Vows shows that he got much further into Liurnia on his second attempt. However, the Liurnian forces proved equal to the Erdtree armies led by Radagon, probably due to their use of sorcery. Clearly, Radagon wasn't going to defeat the Liurnian forces in direct conflict. If you can't beat him, join him. After Radagon married Rennala, he remained in Liurnia. There are several items with descriptions that attest to this, starting with the Radagon icon. Found on the balcony above the debate parlor in Raya Lucaria Academy, this talisman shortens the casting time of sorceries and incantations, which would be ideal for someone who is eager to learn all the sorcery Raya Lucaria has to offer. The description also reads, "As the husband of Rennala of Caria, the red-haired Radagon studied sorcery, and as the husband of Queen Marika, he studied incantations. Thus did the hero aspire to be complete." The wording here connotates that Radagon may have said or displayed notions of incompleteness and learned both sorceries and incantations as a form of compensating for his feelings. As mentioned, this item is found on the balcony above the debate parlor, where we fight a boss called the Red Wolf of Radagon. This wolf is much larger than other wolves encountered in the game, and has red hair like Radagon. It casts the Magic Glintblade spell, a sorcery of the Carian royal family. Clearly, this creature is some creation of Radagon's, if not his progeny or offspring. We'll discuss how this relates to Loki's myths in the next chapter of this video. Indeed, the Red Wolf of Radagon may not be the only chimeric offspring of Radagon. In the consecrated snowfield on the path to Michaela's Haligtree, the player can find and explore the Cave of the Forlorn. The boss enemy of this cave is the Misbegotten Crusader, a larger variation of misbegotten enemies, one who has a mane of long red hair. We encountered a variation of this previously at Castle Morn and will fight another when we get to Michaela's Haligtree. The boss at the Cave of the Forlorn is the only one who appears to have direct ties to Radagon, as it wields and drops the Golden Order Greatsword during the battle. The Golden Order Greatsword is described as greatsword made of light, modeled after the Elden Ring itself, forged by King Consort Radagon to proudly symbolize the tenets of the Golden Order, one of the legendary armaments. Telltale signs betray that this was once the greatsword bequeathed to him by his first wife, Rennala. This important sword of Radagon's falling into the hands of the red-haired misbegotten crusader raises eyebrows and raises questions. Why does this low-born chimera in the Cave of the Forlorn have Radagon's sword? Did Radagon give this sword to this creature like an heirloom? Or did this monster simply steal the sword from the royal capital after Radagon and Marika disappear? The sword is clearly reforged from another sword given to him by Rennala. Evidence points to this sword originally being the Moonlight Greatsword. In every prior FromSoft game, except for Sekiro, the player can obtain a weapon called Moonlight Greatsword. The skill of this weapon is always similar in that the blade can be charged with blue magic and even used to fire a blue arc. However, there is no item that goes by this name in Elden Ring. The player can, however, obtain the Dark Moon Greatsword by completing Ranni's quest. The function and appearance of the Dark Moon Greatsword is nearly identical to the Moonlight Greatsword found in other FromSoft games. The description of the Dark Moon Greatsword reads in part, "A moon greatsword bestowed by a Carian queen upon her spouse to honor long-standing tradition." The difference is that this is not Rennella's sword. This is Ranni's sword to bestow upon her forthcoming consort. The unique weapon art of the Dark Moon Greatsword is, by name, Moonlight Greatsword. The Golden Order Greatsword has been reforged by Radagon in gold, and so has its weapon art been modified. The skill, Establish Order, fires a golden arc forward. The color of the arc is changed to gold, and the elemental power is now holy instead of magic. But the weapon art is similar, nonetheless. I believe this sword and its conversion into the Golden Order indicates why Radagon and his armies invaded Liurnia and fought the Carians. The reason for these incursions is never stated in the game, but the clearly demonstrated result is that Radagon was able to learn and thereby steal the powers of sorceries and the weapon arts that the Carians controlled and taught at Raya Lucaria Academy. All along, his plan was to take them back to Leyndell for use by the Golden Order. Rennala's love and their 3 children seem to mean very little to him. If we visit the Bellum Church, which lies on the road between the Grand Lift of Dectus and the entrance of Raya Lucaria, we find another statue of Radagon instead of Marika. Since he is wearing the Elden Lord crown, which we also see Godfrey wearing at Stormvale, we can infer that this statue was added long after Radagon returned to the Erdtree capital, after conquering Rennala and sorcery. There are other churches where statues of Radagon as Elden Lord have replaced Marika's, including the Church of Pilgrimage in the Weeping Peninsula and the Stormcaller Church in the Altus Plateau. As most other churches in the Lands Between have statues of Marika, one of the purposes of these sites was clearly to worship the eternal goddess of the Lands Between. By replacing Marika's statues in 3 churches, Radagon clearly wishes to become more than just Elden Lord. He wants to be worshipped. Radagon, who was somehow Marika's other half but was not a god himself, was clearly interested in becoming one. As a god, Marika demonstrated acts of unimaginable power. She veiled the Land of Shadows and seemingly moved the entire region to a completely different part of the world, far from the Lands Between. She was also able to dislocate all the Eternal Cities from the surface to deep underground. As punishment to the Nox for transgressing against the two fingers. She was able to do all of this through the power of the Elden Ring, which she hosted inside her very body. Radagon, being Marika's other half, was clearly looking for the means to become as powerful as she. He started by accumulating as much knowledge as possible about sorcery and incantations. He then began creating his own intelligence-based incantations, both as a kind of bonding with his son Mikola and as furtherment of his own power. Is it possible that Radagon, who is clearly not the main soul within Marika's body, was looking for a magical means to become the dominant soul and take control of the Elden Ring? The incantations Radagon created became the basis of Golden Order fundamentalism, which was his attempt to revive and enforce the Golden Order long after it and the Erdtree had lost their power and influence over the people of the lands between. His young son Mikola joined him in this attempt, creating the Discus of Light and Triple Rings of Light incantations. Radagon appears to have responded in kind by creating Radagon's Rings of Light. But according to the description of this incantation, the young Mikola abandoned fundamentalism, for it could do nothing to treat Malenia's accursed rot. Mikola would eventually leave Leyndell, turning to unalloyed gold and the creation of the Halig tree as the symbol of a new order to replace the Golden Order. Another event occurred sometime in this area. We can't be sure when, but the royal capital was assaulted directly by Gransax, the largest of the ancient dragons. Gransax was defeated, and his giant petrified corpse continues to lie across the west part of the city. This initiated the War of the Dragons, and the forces of the royal capital were able to defeat the dragons. Specifically, Godwyn the Golden, son of Marika and Godfrey, was able to defeat the ancient dragon Fortisax. But instead of killing the dragon, Godfrey befriended it. This led to the rise of an ancient dragon cult in the capital, a movement to learn lightning incantations. Another dragon named Lanciax, who was sister to Fortisax, assumed human form and communed with the knights as a priestess of the ancient dragon cult. But then the Night of the Black Knives occurred, during which Godwyn the Golden was assassinated. His soul was murdered by Black Knife assassins, scions of the Eternal Cities, said to be Numen, of the same stock as Marika. The curse mark of death was carved into his back, killing his soul and leaving his body alive but lifeless, making him the first of those who live in death. He was merely the first to die, as the Black Knives hunted down and killed many more demigods, whose corpses are now carried in walking mausoleums throughout the lands between, waiting for the hopeful return of their souls to their bodies. Marika responded by shattering the Elden Ring, but clearly not before confronting Radagon about it. Listen to her spoken echoes, recited by Melina in her bedchamber.
In Marika's own words, O Radagon, leal hound of the Golden Order, thou art yet to become me. Thou art yet to become a god. Let us be shattered, both, mine other self.
And indeed, Marika shattered the Elden Ring, which, since it was housed inside her own body, means she shattered herself and Radagon. Radagon responded by trying fruitlessly to repair the Elden Ring, as stated in the description of Marika's hammer. He then sealed himself and Marika inside the Erdtree, which is where we find them during our journey as the Tarnished to stand before the Elden Ring and become Elden Lord. The entrance to the Erdtree is sealed by an Elden rune that is attributed to Radagon in the descriptions of two items, Radagon's Scar Seal and Radagon's Sword Seal. Indeed, this crosshatch design is depicted behind Radagon on his statues, in the various churches where he tried to be worshipped like Marika. To remove Radagon's Elden rune barring the entrance, we must burn the Erdtree. The Tarnished must travel to the mountaintops of the giants and sacrifice Melina to the giant's flame. Or we must travel deep beneath Leyndell and commune with the Three Fingers and become the Lord of Frenzied Flame. When we finally remove Radagon's rune and burn away the thorns blocking the entrance, we can enter the Erdtree and find Marika, who hangs from a giant rune arc in a crucifixion pose. a red spear impaled in her side. Her pose and her impalement are reminiscent of the crucifixion of Christ or the hanging of Odin from the giant world tree Yggdrasil. I'll dive deeper into this symbology in the next chapter. But what happens next is incredible. The body of Marika falls to the ground and transforms into Radagon. We can see the Elden Ring housed inside his body. We are then faced with fighting and defeating another Elden Lord, having just defeated Godfrey. Radagon fights with Marika's hammer and holy incantations that produce spears. When defeated, Radagon's body is seized by a giant monster, the Elden Beast. This is the true form of the Elden Ring, the vassal beast of the greater will and the living incarnation of the concept of order. It transforms Radagon's body into the Sacred Relic Sword and uses it in the fight. The Sacred Relic Sword can be obtained by exchanging the Elden Remembrance to Enya in the Round Table Hold. The sword description doesn't say anything more specifically about Marika or Radagon, except for the following. Sword wrought from the remains of a god who should have lived a life eternal. Thoughts on what the weapon portends are many and varied. Some consider it the mark of a great sin, or a sign of a great devastation. Some think of it as the end of an age, while others the beginning. To say that we're left with questions following this ending is an understatement. Even after all we've learned about Radagon and Marika, there's so much we don't know. Who was Radagon? How did he come into being, and why was he sharing a body with Queen Marika the Eternal? Why didn't he have her powers if they shared the same body? And what was his full role in the events that occurred prior to the start of the game? I propose that for the rest of this video, we need to dig into the many historical, mythological, and religious influences that we see mashed together in Elden Ring. Hidetaka Miyazaki, the world creator of Elden Ring, Bloodborne, Dark Souls, and Demon Souls, has a unique storytelling style that was described in this Guardian article from March of 2015. When Hidetaka Miyazaki was a child, he was a keen reader, though not a talented one. Often he'd reach passages of text he couldn't understand, and so would allow his imagination to fill in the blanks, using the accompanying illustrations. In this way, he felt he was co-writing the fiction alongside its original author. The thrill of this process never left him, and it is very much there in his arcane and fascinating video games. As I described earlier, his concept of Queen Marika the Eternal is clearly drawn from religious Christian iconography, but also the Norse myths of Odin and Yggdrasil. In Norse mythology, Odin was a god who, to gain greater wisdom, hung himself from the massive world tree Yggdrasil, which also serves as the inspiration for the Erd tree in Elden Ring. During the 9 days and nights he hung there, he pierced himself with his spear Gungnir, sacrificing himself to unlock the secrets of the universe. Surprisingly, this ordeal did not kill him, but his self-sacrifice helped him to gain knowledge of runes, or powerful symbols with magic and divine properties. It is interesting that runes are also in Elden Ring and used as currency. So, if Marika is Hidetaka Miyazaki's character, but was created from a combination of Jesus and Odin, then does this mean that Radagon, her other half, was also based on characters from Christianity and Norse mythology? In Norse mythology, Loki is the Trickster God, meaning he is the embodiment of the very concept of deception. He causes both lighthearted mischief and major problems for other gods, usually to their shame and degradation. Sometimes he helps other gods, and sometimes he completely thwarts their plans. In all situations, he takes the course of action that is most beneficial to himself. He is often portrayed as selfish, careless, and indifferent to the welfare of others. Loki behaves like a prototypical villain. Loki is the son of the goddess Lofi and Farbati, who is a Jotun or giant. Therefore, Loki is a half-giant demigod. Similarly, Radagon shares the red hair of the fire giants. The description of the giant's red braid item has a second paragraph that says, "Every giant is red of hair, and Radagon was said to have despised his own red locks. Perhaps that was a curse of their kind." This description seems to insinuate, quite disparagingly, that Radagon is related to the giants. These negative connotations toward giants are likely due to events early in Marika's reign, when she and her Elden Lord Godfrey and his Golden Army assaulted the mountaintops of the giants and slaughtered all but one of them, whom Marika cursed to live eternal and tend to the giant's flame, to prevent it from burning either the Erd Tree or its predecessor, the Great Tree. This fire giant is the one we must defeat to reach the Forge of the Giants, and it does indeed have red hair. While it would be interesting to be able to connect Radagon to the lineage of the giants, we don't have further evidence to support this theory. Radagon is a little on the tall side, however. In Norse mythology, Loki is said to have initiated relations with a female Jotun or giantess named Angerboda. She gave birth to 3 of Loki's children, who all turned into monsters. They are the giant wolf Fenrir, the world-eating serpent Jormungandr, and Hel, the half-alive, half-dead goddess who became the ruler of the dead. After siring her 3 children, Loki left Angerboda without explanation, returned to Asgard, and married a goddess. The comparisons here to Radagon and his relationship with Rennala are a little more direct, and are the reasons I started researching this topic. Rennala is indeed a giant of a woman with unusually broad shoulders. She and Radagon had 3 children, Rykard, Radon, and Rani. Are these children also inspired by Loki's children? Rykard became a ruthless justiciar with a serpentine demeanor, according to Sir Gideon Ofnir the All-Knowing. He commanded a company of inquisitors who located themselves at Mount Gilmir, an active volcano. While we're not sure what the term inquisitor means in Elden Ring, we know in real history the inquisitors were officers of the Roman Catholic Inquisition of the 13th century, charged with finding heretics, torturing them for information, burning them at the stake, and stamping out all nonconformity to religion. We can see various torture devices, including methods of burning people in lava, all around Mount Gelmir. So it's likely that Rykard once served the Golden Order fundamentalists in stamping out all opposition to their practices. And let's not forget, Golden Order fundamentalism was started by Rykard's father, Radagon. But for some reason, Praetor Rykard eventually turned to heresy himself, becoming the Lord of Blasphemy and a glutton for depravity. He had a role in the Night of the Black Knives, it seems, and his sister Rani gifted him the Blasphemous Claw, a rock engraved with traces of the Rune of Death, so that if word of the conspiracy got out, Rykard could challenge Malakath the Black Blade, Marika's protector of the Rune of Death. During the shattering, Rykard fed himself to a giant snake, becoming part of it. Together, he and the serpent began feeding on the champions of both armies, causing his own men to abandon him and seek to forge a weapon capable of killing the giant snake he'd become. In the game, it is we, the Tarnished, who find this weapon and use it to kill Rykard in his massive serpent form. In many ways, Rykard is like Loki's child Jormungandr, the colossal serpent of Norse mythology who encircles the mortal realm, consumes his own tail, and avows a deep hatred of the gods. General Radon, known as the Star Scourge, is another of Radagon's children with Rennala. Many theorize he is the middle child between Rykard and Rani. Radon became the most fearsome warrior in the entire Lands Between. He called himself a lion and wore lion motifs on his armor. Godfrey, the Elden Lord before Radagon, was strongly associated with the lion spirit attached to his back, Beast Regent Sarash. By donning the lion, Radon was pronouncing his intent to be the next Elden Lord. We eventually learn of Radon's plans in the DLC. During the Shattering, Malenia marched her Cleanrot Knights across Liurnia and Limgrave into Caelid to confront Radon for reasons unknown. They fought to a standstill until Malenia leapt onto his back and let the Scarlet Rot bloom, destroying the entire region. The Scarlet Rot didn't kill Radon, but it did destroy his mind. He's been wandering the Caelid desert like a mad dog, feasting on corpses of friend and foe alike. While he remains in this state, Radon does bear a few similarities to Fenrir, the second of Loki's children with Angerboda. Fenrir grew so large and so terrifying that the Norse gods grew fearful of him and restrained him with an unbreakable chain forged by the dwarves. In a similar fashion, Radagon's use of gravity magic caused him to grow to an immense and terrifying size. Like Radagon, Fenrir is associated with devouring anything in his path and intense, insatiable hunger. Fenrir was prophesied to break free of his chains during Ragnarok and devour the god Odin, as well as the sun. Radagon is known as the Star Scourge because he casts a gravity spell on the universe, apparently, to hold back the stars and prevent them falling on the lands between. So there are a few slight similarities between Radagon and Fenrir, but not many. The youngest of Radagon's 3 children with Rennala, Rani, would be selected by the Two Fingers as an Empyrean, a kind of candidate to replace Queen Marika and usher in a new age. She received her own 2 fingers and her own shadow-bound beast in the form of Blythe. Her mother, Rennala, taught Rani about the Dark Moon, a cosmic force of dark magic that was cold, dark, and veiled in occult mystery. Rani also met an old crone in the woods who would become her mentor and teach her cold sorceries. Out of loathing for her 2 fingers and the fate for which she was preordained, Rani had a hand in orchestrating the Night of the Black Knives. By some means we don't fully understand, she was able to steal a fragment of the Rune of Death from Malekith and forge it into god-slaying black blades, as well as the blasphemous claw she gave to Rykard. She used one of these black blades to slay her own flesh by carving half of the curse mark of death into her own back. With the help of Preceptor Celibus, Rani attached her soul to a doll fashioned to look like the old Snow Witch from the woods. Her spiritual half is connected to the doll at the head so that she appears to be half spirit and half doll. In many ways, Rani is like Loki's daughter Hel, the third of his children with Angrboda, who is said to appear half alive and half dead, with half her body being live flesh and the other half a black and rotting corpse. Hel is the Norse goddess of the underworld, a realm called Helheim, and she rules over the souls of those who die of sickness or old age. Her realm is described as cold and dark, which matches Rani's cold magic and dark moon. Hel is described as apathetic and detached from emotions, but she can turn fierce and merciless when offended, which we also see in Rani, especially if we attack her or make bad choices like going along with Celibus's plans. Another similarity is that Hel is a goddess, whereas her brothers are just monsters. Rani is an Empyrean and a potential god of the New Age, and her brothers are not. Like Hel, her brothers are also just monsters. If we enter into Rani's service, she sends us on a long quest that involves descending into a deep pit that leads to the eternal city of Nokron, which is fully underground and greatly resembles a kind of underworld, full of lost civilizations and lost souls that can no longer travel above ground. After fathering 3 children with Angrboda, Loki left her, returned to Asgard, and married the goddess Sigyn. By her, Loki had 2 more children, Nari and Vali, who are sometimes theorized to be twins. Fate would not be kind to these boys, as during the events of Ragnarok, Loki was bound by the entrails of his son Nari, torn from him by his other son Vali, who had turned into a wolf. Following in Loki's footsteps, Radagon left Rennala after several years of marriage, returning to Leyndell royal capital to take the place of Godfrey as next Elden Lord. He became king consort to the goddess Marika, and they created the Empyrean twins Malenia and Mikola. Radagon and Marika also created Mesmer and his younger sister Melina, but it's unclear in which order the children were born. Given that Mesmer was said to be like Radagon's older brother, it's possible that he was born before Radagon left for Liurnia. We also have no clue when Melina was born and lived. However, Mesmer has bright red hair, and Melina's hair is reddish-brown, tying them both to the lineage of Radagon. Regardless of order, all the children that Radagon and Marika created together would be ill-fated, like the children of Loki and Sigyn. Mesmer was born a vessel of an outer god known as the Abyssal Serpent. This serpent may represent Nidogr from Norse mythology, a giant snake who gnaws on the roots of Yggdrasil and dwells in Niflheim and Hell. Marika tried to contain the abyssal serpent within Mesmer by plucking out his eye and replacing it with a seal of her grace. She also made special physics to heal him, but even then she feared the abyssal serpent enough to secret away her child within the realm of shadow. Inside Mesmer burned kindling, which the serpent gnawed away at. This would eventually be used to burn the sealing tree at the old Ra ruins. Mesmer, much like his younger sister, bore a vision of fire. Melina is that younger sister, and she is the kindling maiden who identifies our tarnished as special and journeys with us to the forge of the giant's flame to set fire to the Erdtree. To achieve this, she must unfortunately allow herself to be consumed by the giant's flame. Because of Melina's sacrifice, we can confront Radagon and become Elden Lord. Both Mesmer and Melina being born as kindling is interesting. My theory is that both Mesmer and Melina were afflicted by an outer god, specifically the fell god of the giant's flame, who was previously the god of the giants. This god was effectively defeated and driven from the lands between by Marika and Godfrey during their campaign to wipe out the fire giants to protect the Erdtree. The Empyrean twins Melania and Mikola were also cursed by outer gods. Melania with scarlet rot, and Mikola with eternal youth. Melania's curse would cause her to become blind and lose her limbs, but she would meet a blind swordsman who taught her swordsmanship, and she became an undefeatable warrior. Mikola was a kind and well-liked boy who tried to help Melania, first by exploring Golden Order fundamentalism with his father, Radagon. But he abandoned Golden Order fundamentalism when he found it could do no good for his twin sister. He instead fashioned prosthetic limbs for her out of unalloyed gold, and then invented an unalloyed gold needle that impeded her scarlet rot. Mikola and Melania would eventually leave and move north past the consecrated snowfields to create the Haligtree. So, all the children that Radagon and Marika created together were cursed by various outer gods, though in Mikola's case we're not sure which one. Notice that I keep saying they created these children because they are all the progeny of one god and not two separate beings. In my headcanon, I imagine them being created out of clay and breathed into life, much like the biblical God did with Adam and Eve. And Melina does say something that would seem to confirm this.
Your seamster, Bok. I see him crying from time to time. I think he misses his mother. He wants someone to tell him he's beautiful. Does being born of a mother mean one behaves in such a manner?
Marika did have children before Radagon who were not cursed, including Godwyn the Golden and possibly some other unknown demigods who were killed soon after the Night of the Black Knives. She had Godwyn with Godfrey, but also had Mohg and Morgoth with him. These twins were born with the Omen curse, but this was not likely the doing of an outer god. This was most likely a curse inflicted on Marika by the Hornsent in retaliation for her so-called betrayal of them at their Gate of Divinity, where Marika stole godhood and the Elden Ring for herself. But all four of the children she created with Radagon bore some kind of curse from an outer god, with the common factor being Radagon, who also birthed monsters with Rennala. It seems plausible that he is the cause of his children's curses. This is another way that Radagon is like Loki, who conceived and even birthed Chimeras. As mentioned, the Norse god Loki birthed 3 monsters by the giant Angrboda. He also gave birth to other diabolical creatures. He supposedly ate the heart of an evil woman and became pregnant himself with the seed of evil, which caused him to birth a lineage of ogres. In another story, Odin commanded Loki to distract a giant. This giant had sworn that he could build a wall around Asgard in exchange for Odin's wife, Freya. Odin took the bet because he didn't believe the giant, but the giant surprised everyone by quickly completing the work. Loki shapeshifted into a mare and lured away the giant's best workhorse. The giant was unable to complete the work, but Loki lay with the workhorse and became pregnant. He gave birth to Sleipnir, an 8-legged horse who later became Odin's steed. As previously discussed, the red-maned misbegotten enemies in Elden Ring appear to have some connection to Radagon, as one of them is found to hold his Golden Order greatsword. And there are also the Red Wolves and Lesser Red Wolves of Radagon, which appear to bear his red hair and protect the people and locations that he holds dear. This is indeed a stretch, but given the numerous other similarities of Radagon to Loki from Norse mythology, and given Loki's bestial proclivities, I begin to think that the connection is more likely than any of us would care to admit. As we've explored, Radagon is in many ways very much like the Loki of Norse mythology, and Loki is the one who triggers the events of Ragnarok, or the War of the Gods and the End of the World, by arranging the death of the most beautiful and beloved of gods, Balder. The Shattering in Elden Ring is an event that closely resembles Ragnarok, in that the death of the most beloved of the demigods causes the rest to fight each other for the shards of the Elden Ring, vying to become the next god of the coming age. However, the result of this war is abandonment by the greater will, the end of the Golden Order, and the stagnation of the lands between, which in itself is a kind of apocalypse. If Loki killed Balder and triggered Ragnarok, did his Elden Ring counterpart Radagon kill Godwyn and trigger the Shattering? In our dialogues with her, Ranni does claim that she did it all, that she stole a fragment of the Rune of Death from Malekith somehow and forged the Black Knives. But she doesn't mention recruiting assassins from the Eternal Cities, nor coordinating the attack on Godwyn. In the story trailer that came out before the game's release, Ranni narrates,
"On a night of wintry fog, the Rune of Death was stolen. And the demigods began to fall, starting with Godwyn the Golden."
This is the only time she mentions Godwyn outside the actual game. Ranni is often attributed with Godwyn's death. However, if you review all her in-game dialogue, as I have, she doesn't mention Godwyn once. What she openly and honestly takes credit for is that she stole the Rune of Death from Malekith, forged the Black Knives, and carved the half a curse mark into her own flesh to be free of her 2 fingers. But the thing she does not own up to is having a role in Godwyn's death, nor does she mention recruiting the Black Knife assassins of the Eternal City. And while she did forge all the Black Knives, she was probably not the one who distributed them to the assassins. After all, the assassins all tried to kill Ranni and her henchmen during the game's events. This leaves open a shocking possibility. While Ranni may have orchestrated her portion of the Night of the Black Knives, someone else might have recruited the Black Knife assassins, delivered to them the remaining Black Knives, and assigned them their target, Godwyn the Golden. Given the many other similarities between Radagon and Loki, could this not be another similarity? In the myth of Ragnarok, the goddess Frigga begins having nightmares about the death of her son Balder. To protect him, she speaks with every entity in the cosmos, living and unliving, making each of them swear not to harm Balder. Effectively, Balder becomes immortal. In this way, Frigga is like Marika, removing the Rune of Death from the Elden Ring so that her children become immortal. Loki then questions Frigga and finds out from her that she failed to ask Mistletoe not to harm Balder because she considered it only a little plant. Mistletoe is poisonous, so Loki carves a spear out of mistletoe and gives it to the god Hoder, who at the time was playing a game with Balder, where he would strike Frigga's beloved son with all sorts of weapons, just to play with his immortality. But the mistletoe spear impales and kills Balder. I can't help but think of the Rune of Death being the one thing in the lands between that can truly kill someone. The Rune of Death is also known as Destined Death, or the death that is supposed to claim every person eventually. To grant immortality to all within the lands between, Marika sealed away the Rune of Death long ago, long before any of Radagon's and Renala's children were born. If Marika tried so hard to hide the Rune of Death, how did Ranni learn about it? If anyone else had written Elden Ring, I'd criticize Ranni's orchestration of the Night of the Black Knives as being full of plot holes. But the world of Elden Ring was created by George R.R. Martin and Hidetaka Miyazaki. And since Mr. Martin's other great fantasy series, A Song of Ice and Fire, pulls so much influence from Norse mythology and British history, I'm betting he knows quite a bit about Loki, who was a clear inspiration for his character, Littlefinger. Therefore, I propose that all the holes in Ranni's story can be filled if we continue to think of her father, Radagon, as the Loki of Elden Ring. Radagon, being part of Marika, is probably quite familiar with the Rune of Death, that Malekith hides it, and how to get a fragment of it. Radagon, having made an act of atonement at the Church of Vows in front of the statue of a Nox monk, using a hidden knight tier to fulfill his plans to learn sorcery, appears to be very familiar with the Eternal Cities and their magics. He knows the Nox once tried to forcefully sever the ties of the two fingers to the greater will, and that they'd be likely to take any opportunity to strike back at Marika for her banishing their eternal cities underground. And think about this, Ranni doesn't even know how to enter Nokron. The Tarnished must eventually speak to Salin to learn that Radahn is blocking the stars and that slaying him will unleash them and reveal the entrance to Nokron. Ranni clearly doesn't know much about navigating the eternal cities, let alone how to recruit assassins among the Nox. They kill Godwyn for her and then they turn on her and her war council? Why? It makes no sense. Radagon is clearly the unidentified co-conspirator in the Night of the Black Knives, but what would be his motivation in killing Godwyn? Well, think about the lengths Radagon went to in his plans to steal the secrets of sorcery from the Carians and bring their treasures back to Marika and Leyndell. Yet Golden Order fundamentalism, the strict religious practice he initiated, was adopted only by zealots and inquisitors like Rykard, who deemed all opposition to their beliefs as heresy to be stamped out. We see these philosophies still espoused by Brother Corrin and especially Dee, Hunter of the Dead, who now uses the incantations Radagon created to hunt down those who live in death. And the noble Goldmask has embarked on a quest to determine the flaws in the Golden Order. Radagon's gift to the Golden Order was really the beginning of its downfall. Meanwhile, Godwyn the Golden, Marika's one perfect son, defeats the ancient dragons, befriends them, and convinces them to teach everyone in the capital powerful lightning magic. This gives rise to the ancient dragon cult in the capital and makes the Golden Order far more powerful than anything Radagon brought back from Liurnia. Godwyn outshined Radagon while hardly even trying. He is the one child of Marika who is not afflicted by an outer god, not a monster, while all of Radagon's progeny certainly are. What more motivation would Radagon need to have him assassinated? And to cover his tracks, why not have Ranni and her war council silenced as well? And what further proof would Marika need of Radagon's treachery before she would be convinced to shatter the Elden Ring and consequently shatter them both? The only aspect of Radagon that I haven't covered is how he became Marika's other half, and frankly, I just have no clue. There is nothing in the stories of Loki to indicate that he might have been more than one person in a single body. The Shadow of the Erdtree DLC certainly gave us more insight into Marika's past and the trauma she suffered that caused her to ascend to godhood. During an era called the Crucible, the Lands Between was swept up in the pursuit of divinity by combining various forms of life. People of a certain region grew horns on every life form and called themselves the Hornset. These people persecuted and captured Marika's people, the shaman tribe of the Numen. Because the wounded flesh of the shamans was found to meld with the flesh of others, the Hornset would whip the shamans with their poisonous tooth whips, chop them up with their bony butchering knives, and combine them together in giant jars, trying to create their own Empyrean demigod. The Hornset's goal for this Empyrean was to ascend the stairs at the Gate of Divinity in Einar Elim and become the new vessel of the Elden Ring. The Elden Ring seems to have been lost thousands of years earlier when the ancient sun realm of Far Mazula was destroyed, most likely by either a meteor or a war between the ancient dragons and their low-born drake offspring, or both. We don't find conclusive evidence, but it appears that Marika might have been used in these experiments. The failures can be found throughout the jails in the Realm of Shadow, and they bear a resemblance to Marika. More than that, we don't know for certain, but my own personal guess is that Marika was likely the successful result of these experiments, and the reason she emerged from the jar as an Empyrean is because her flesh might have been combined with the flesh of giants. But again, there is nothing in the game to prove my theory except that she can transform into a man with the red hair of the giants. I've veered into the realm of heavy speculation in the last part of this video, and I fully acknowledge that there is no evidence in the game to prove my theory that Marika was created from the combination of the flesh of shamans and giants. However, she did use her powers to hide the entire realm of shadow and her past, so it's likely she hid or destroyed any evidence of her true origins. The fact that she and Radagon are the same person is also an extremely well-kept secret. I've also stretched a bit to explore whether Radagon was the true mastermind behind the Knight of the Black Knives, but not by much. He already bears so many resemblances to Loki, including his implied lineage from giants, his mating with a giant woman to create 3 monstrous children, and his subsequent leaving her to return to the home of the gods and marry a goddess. Plus, there are these strange chimeras we find in the game that are loosely tied to Radagon, his implied need to be worshipped by replacing several statues of Marika with his own likeness, and the fact that he tried to create his own cult of zealots in the Golden Order fundamentalists. Radagon is so much like Loki, and if we think about him in terms of Loki's story, I think we begin to answer some of the open questions we have about Radagon and Marika. Thank you for watching this insanely long video. I didn't plan to write a novelette when I first started working on the script, but the more I delved into the mythology of Loki, the more I realized it explained the entirety of Elden Ring. To me, at least, but what do you think? Please post your thoughts down in the comments and let me know whether you agree with me or have other ideas. Thanks again, and I'll see you in the next video.